one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comments. I don't think I see anyone in person. Oh, I see one hand raised online. Mr. John David Corey. We will have 21 minutes total allotted for public comments. I will keep the clock. Mr. Corey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Your time starts now, sir. You have 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Okay, very good. I have my timer as well. I
All right.
won't take too much time, but thank you very much for taking public comment via Zoom. Sorry I can't be there today. I just wanted to take a quick moment to weigh in on a few agenda items that you guys have in front of you this evening. The first one is Library College. And just quickly, I really view it as an amazing opportunity for the town, and actually an opportunity that many towns would give their IT for. I mean, there's a historical estate with some outbuildings on it that has been used for a school. Could it be the answer for us to solve our overflow school needs for the lower school kids in an historic setting? I really could see the site being improved as a preservation project and get the whole community involved in it. And then perhaps once it's up and running, we could have the children as in and around this historic site with maybe outbuildings that reflect the original use of the land. Really engaging, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity, so I would definitely support that. I also see that you guys are going to be talking about a Milton Village local historic district, and I'm a big fan of historic districts. I think they add a lot of value to the community, so I would very much support this. I know Meredith Hall has been leading the charge on that, and I very much appreciate her efforts there. I would just point out that all our main roads in town, Randolph, Canton, Elliott, Adams, Central, Randolph, Canton, Adams, they all lead into Milton Village. So that is our downtown. So preserving it would be very special, and a local historic district would be amazing. You guys all know that I'm big into traffic mitigation, and I see on the agenda resurrection of the traffic mitigation subcommittee that we had many years ago. Big fan of that. Look what we did on Randolph Avenue. We got the town together, we got the DOT together, and we got the residents together.
1 minute.
A robust conversation, and we actually were able to make a lot of positive change in very quick order. Hopefully Upper Canton Avenue will be next, but I would very much support the traffic mitigation subcommittee being led by some of the select board members. So those are my comments. Thank you for your service, and have a great night.
All right, thank you, Mr. Corey. All right, that is our only hand online. I will leave it for anyone in person who wants to join public comment. With that, I will close public comments. And Mr. Corey takes us directly into item 4, discussion of Library College acquisition and review. It's only been a week, but Mr. Milano, if you have any updates you'd like to share for discussion.
As we discussed in our meeting last week, we are awaiting our appraisal report, which is expected to be delivered either this week or early next week. We have been in touch with the broker representing Library, just explaining what our timeline is to receive that appraisal report and submit an offer to them for consideration. They understand what our timeline is. I requested if we could submit an offer following our August 4th meeting. They indicated that was acceptable and that their timeline is to accept offers throughout August. So in terms of where we are at, we are awaiting that appraisal report, and if the select board is going to make an offer, that timeline is, we've indicated, early August at this point. And the brokers indicated back to us that they're accepting offers throughout August. So that's it on the acquisition side or potential acquisition side of the matter.
Thank you. So timeline extended through August with us waiting for our appraisal and then our offer being tendered. Thoughts or questions from the members?
I'll just one other data point we're waiting for. I'll just give an update from the school, and I'll touch on it in more detail on the committee updates on the school building committee. But the deliverable from DLR, the architects, the school building committee is engaged to prepare initial findings for test fit for a pre-K building is on track. So that timing should fit in nicely to everything we're considering in August. What that means is next week, so in the school building committee yesterday, we virtually looked at a draft report that is now going out to a pricing estimator. And we should have a final report next week. I think school building committee, select board probably soon after. And I think one thing we should be clear back to the architects is expectations of the architects are prepared to present or be prepared to answer questions on their report, summarizing sort of the options and pricing on August 3rd to the school building committee. The next night we have our meeting. I suggested they pencil that in on their calendar to come present to us too. I don't see why we wouldn't do that, but we should probably just confirm that we'd like them to come to talk, answer any questions we have about the report. But that all seems to be going in a good direction as far as their work, and I can get into that more in the school building committee update.
If you're okay, I think this is a good spot for you, just
All right.
here's the school building committee update now.
Yeah, no sense in 2 hours of suspense and coming back to that, right? So, let me think about, what I think what we're gonna see in the deliverable are 2 to 3 options that the architects are gonna price out. The first option has to do with sort of what the plan would look like to fit this pre-K project with no addition to the building. Some, maybe it's new stairs, modest additions, but no large addition to the building. The asterisk there is that they can fit with that model something like in the report we can 18 of the requested 25 classrooms that the school district leadership sort of identified as a good plan for the future here. So that will be one option that's presented. Additional options that will be included in this report will be either, both a 2-story addition and a 3-story addition, which would, the 2-story addition would, I think, be the exact number of 25 classrooms that the school committee and school district leadership identified as a necessity. The third option of a larger addition, just upwards, would be a few additional classrooms to kind of allow for 10 to 15% future growth possibilities. So, the report will do it more justice than that, but I think they're gonna come back with a few options. We did look at some initial drawings in the meeting that should be in the report, I'd imagine, that had the addition sort of in the front end of the property, if you're looking at it from Adams, to avoid knocking down that large tree on the property, which seems like a really good thing, but a lot of enthusiasm from the architects. So that sort of seemed like a key takeaway. Last, following the architect's presentation, the committee members did talk a bit, just sort of in an open agenda item, about if the town acquires a property and pursues consideration for the school, how that may or may not fit into an MSBA option. In other words, at what point would the town decide whether to pursue this property in a potential school, either without MSBA funding or with, and the chair received some questions about what that timeline might look like for each. So I mentioned that in case that sort of helps you think about what kind of questions you might want to ask when these groups are presenting over the next couple of weeks.
Pete, what was the process for potential process for slotting this, the library concept in, like swapping it out as a substitute in the MSBA. Has that been evaluated, or is there a process to evaluate?
Yeah,
And how long do they think it would take to,
I think Nick may be better equipped to answer that. Because I think there is a substantial delay if we resubmit
okay,
to put this site for different grades in with MSBA. That's why we're running kind of parallel right now. Our
Yeah.
continued project with MSBA goes on, which we'll talk about later, with OPM being assigned.
so is it the same full MSBA evaluation and approval process?
Just move on.
Okay.
I don't have a lot more to add to that, because we have
That's
asked,
my question.
we have asked that question of
Okay.
MSBA, and the way they basically said, if and when you control the site, we can have that conversation about what that
Okay.
process
Oh,
might look
right,
like,
right.
so
I think you may have actually told me this before too.
I think they
forgot.
want control of the site determined.
Yeah,
But it would not necessarily mean leaving the MSBA program in its entirety, submitting a new application, then getting it, and waiting. It does mean going back to an earlier phase.
yeah,
What phase and how long that might take to get you back up are the questions that we still have and aren't answered yet. That would be, a key piece of this, because if it's an 18-month delay or a 6-month delay, obviously that's a big swing to
yeah,
get reimbursement potential. So understanding what that timeline might look like remains kind of an action item for us.
so our decision point here really shouldn't rely on whether or not we get MSBA funding.
I would say no, but our
It's like a nice,
relationship with MSBA
yeah.
happens after our control
right,
of Laboret, right? So is there a place, we don't know, if we
Yeah.
control Laboret with MSBA, they say, okay, well, it'll be an additional 6 months, is that worth it to get back into the process? That's not something we can really evaluate until we have Laboret under actual town control. And a lot of hurry up and wait.
I mean, for sure, we're having, the timeline has us having to make the decision on the property before we, like, we're, months away from, I think, certainty on some of those aspects. I think we should have an initial estimate of what, a school, may cost there based on this initial diligence. And then some big, decision points in the coming months. I think, in my view, in the upcoming meetings, that's a reason to, and we talked about kind of turning back to this in August, just trying to kind of map out some of those decision points and what we can do to, be well prepared for all of them.
So that conversation with school building committee and the architects and that preliminary presentation that they showed, I think is recorded, it will be on Milton Access, I think in a day or so. For us or anyone watching that wants to kind of get a preview of how the architects are thinking about Laboret being used in that depth, which we'll get the final or more mature version of that in the coming weeks. Other thoughts from the members, questions? With the timeline of the bid being, I guess, a bit extended, one thing that I want to point to is that when we submit our bid, we get our appraisal, that in that bid letter, we make it clear to Laboret and Curry that we are also willing to match if there is a higher bid, because we've expressed it with them in person, through email, that the town is very interested, but I think at every point that we have, that we can continue to reinforce that, it is important that we do so. Nick and I spoke about that, I hope the board will be on board with that, us including that in our bid letter to them as well.
In concept, I guess perhaps we could talk about like up to
Yes,
something,
yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
but
Up to
you
a
know.
reasonable amount, yeah, it's not infinite.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, if no additional points on Labore, we will move to agenda 5, state election, special election ballot questions. I don't think we have much update on this since we weren't looking to be on the state ballot. The Fire Station Building Committee is meeting later this week, finalizing their question, if they're gonna be on the ballot, but Mr. Milano, if I'm not missing anything, I think this skips us at this point.
Yes, the board would have to act at its next meeting on August 4th if there were a ballot questions to add to that state ballot, so the deadline is August 5th, so we have one more meeting, which is submit the ballot question.
Okay, so item 6, special town meeting date and timeline. The two presented to us are Monday, October 19th through Thursday, October 22nd, or Monday, October 26th through Thursday, October 29th. I believe when town clerk was here, she had a preference for October 19th for us to finalize that because it gave the town clerk more time as well as her staff in preparing not only for our election and town meeting, but for the state election. So I do believe we have to vote on this tonight. So,
Yes, please.
Make a motion to, for special town meeting date and timeline, Monday, October 19th, Thursday, October 22nd.
Second.
all right, motion made and seconded. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshaw.
Yes.
Ms. Nolan.
Yes.
Ms. Henry.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Item 7, discussion, update, presentation, approval of potential articles for fall 2026 special town meeting. Right now, I'm gonna call a little bit of an audible since Mr. Lawfer is here. You don't have to wait this entire time. I did ask Mr. Lawfer to come in and speak to us about item K, which is the Milton Village Local Historic District. Mr. Lawfer,
Thank you.
you can come and join us at the table.
Not just, I'm sorry?
You can sit at
Please,
the
that's
table.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. So we can get you on camera.
and sign in.
Oh, no, you don't sign in, that's for public.
Okay. I wanna thank my committee members, both Meredith and Brian Halloran, for being here as well. This is culmination of 4 years of study, and we have, I looked at the memorandum that Nick shared with me with the select board. We've done all of that and a bit more, but we're gonna do some more. With our final bylaw, which I just heard is coming to us tomorrow, and we have a meeting in August 3rd where we will ratify it as our group and send it back to Nick for inclusion. We are going to do more community outreach. We're going to have more community meetings. We're supposed to have only one. I'd like to do 3. We have numerous changes addressing all the concerns from the first town meeting, what was that, 2 years ago, to now. We addressed everything that all of the different committees who had concerns with it. We went and addressed all of that. We're waiting for that clean copy, which we're getting. And a couple of, we have public meetings, discussion with Chris Skelly. And I'd like Meredith, Chris Skelly is, well, Meredith, can you talk about that?
It's exciting, you can stay.
Oh, good. Meredith is a member of our committee, but also, as you know, chairman of the planning committee.
And I'm new to this committee, but I'm very familiar with this study. I'm actually now the representative from the Historical Commission. And this has been something that the Historical Commission has wanted to see, although we have a number of historic districts in town. But starting with one, I think we all felt that the Milton Village is the most significant. And I actually, as a matter of fact, the Historical Commission a few years ago, when Extra Space Storage was renovating some of the mill buildings and had acquired it, part of, they were required to put together some literature, some information. And Anthony Samarco and the Historical Commission actually wrote and put together a walking tour. If anyone has ever had the chance to do one of his walking tours, he does a walking tour of the Milton Village. This identifies some of the historic, it's a walking map, individuals can take this. The Historical Commission had these created, and Extra Space was good enough to fund this. But it's a walking tour that you can go and you can read here. If you're not reading Anthony Samarco's books, you can actually look at this map and see the significance of this location. It's also, a local historic district has also been one of the goals of the master plan for the town. And we've never taken action on it. And so this is a study committee that's been working on this. Coming onto the committee, what I felt, this is the first time our town has ever looked at doing a local historic district. It's very new, and as much as Mass Historical has helped sort of mentor Larry and the committee along and nurture them and help given examples of other towns, this is the first time that Milton will be doing this and to bringing something to town meeting. So there is a person, and I spoke to Liz Manning and Nick about this, that I really felt like it would be appropriate to, if we could, fund a consultant and find someone. We reached out to MAPC to see if they do any consulting on this work. We actually learned, and it was recommended, Chris Skelly, who used to work for Mass Historical Commission, is now a consultant and working independently. And he works with towns throughout the Commonwealth to help them go through the process, whether it's attending meetings, he actually has a presentation already put together for a town meeting, and he can answer the questions and really talk about the pros and the cons of this and how other towns how this has worked in other towns and challenges that maybe other towns have felt. He will give a very honest, open sense, but he would be able to, and Liz Manning was able to get a scope of work. He would be able to attend a select board meeting as we get closer, a warrant committee meeting, which will be very important, a planning board meeting, again, historical commission, and the local historic district committee. And he would actually be able to be there at town meeting to answer questions that, as much as, again, the committee is educated on, there are questions that will arise that Chris would be able to answer. And I think it would be really helpful for this process, just so, and whether town meeting votes it in or votes not to have it, I think people will feel very informed on whether a local historic district is good for the community and why it might make sense in this particular location. So Chris did put a proposal, a scope of work together, and it's not to exceed $10,000. So it's, based on his time. He's out in the Berkshires, so a lot of the meetings would be remote, but he would be able to attend at our, and we will have to follow up with him to make sure he's still able to do this work. But if the select board were to be able to approve funding a consultant, I think it would be wonderful and well worthwhile to really have sort of the best representation as we go towards town meeting on this, because it is very new to our community.
There are some things that have happened in other towns that Chris is privy to with his long history of working on these things. And he brings a level of expertise that, as much as we've studied and we have, he brings an expertise from across the state. And that, I think, is going to be very valuable for us.
So I think
I think that's
everything, and I don't know if there's questions at this time. Yeah.
What are we gonna study?
It's not a study, the study has already been done.
Right.
It's actually most of these properties, I think almost all of the properties in Milton Village have been documented and are on the National Register. But what it is explaining this article, what it would mean to Milton, and what are the benefits, what are the pros, and what are the cons. So it's not a study, It's the implementation of taking this article that will be moved to town meeting, and understanding it better. He will just help with that process.
The study, John, was the difference between federal historic districts, state historic districts, and then the 121-23 local historic districts. So we had to kind of parse there's help and then there's restrictions on all of these. They're all very different. And we had to study them to know where we needed to fit in. So our study is done, and the Milton Village is the area where we designated, makes the most sense. It was one of those areas, first of all, where Milton was first founded at the very beginning, was in Milton Village. And then from there, it's the only one that's not protected. Even though there's historical buildings there, there is not an historic district. One final thing, anybody can have their town, if your house is more than 50 years old, you can have it designated as historic. You pay your money and you get a little slip and you're historic. Historic districts are a different thing. They come with some guidance and some guidelines that
And there's a difference between, so the Milton Village, which is part of the Milton Hill, there is a national district, so on the National Register, so it's already there. The problem is, it's a designation, it does not give, a local historic district gives you tools to protect buildings. So if it's a National Historic District, somebody could come in and tear down, they could have come in right now and torn down the Bank of America building. They could take down any of those mill buildings. Without a local historic district, and that's what the Historical Commission has been most concerned about, is the demolition of the significant historic buildings down in the Milton Village. But other, buildings that have been altered, buildings that have been changed, those would be under most communities. It's fine to tear that down, but when they rebuild something, you wanna see it fit in with the rest of that neighborhood. So that's where some design guidelines, standards are usually implemented with a local historic district. But it's primarily the concern of the Historical Commission is, we just don't wanna see things torn down that our town would wanna see torn down. And we do have a 2-year demolition delay, but for a developer, they can just run out that clock while they're doing their architectural plans and getting things ready and we still, after 2 years, they can still demolish a building. So this is, a local historic district is the only way right now that you can prevent a demolition of a treasured building to our town.
we haven't felt any pushback from homeowners on this. They seem to understand it. Builders and people who are working in that area, who own buildings, they're a little bit more concerned. They have legitimate concern because it's another layer of approval that they're gonna have. But Chris Skelly and I have talked about being able to present how this has helped business by protecting the community and keeping the flavor of the community. So I do understand, the builders being concerned about it, but I think we have enough guidelines that say we can't go beyond this line, that they should be comfortable with.
Yeah, so my questions were gonna be mostly around, sort of, again, like what's the intent, or like what are the boundaries of where like the local historic district permitting process would be versus the site review process that like the planning board has. If you could like walk us through some of the differences there, whether maybe some of the information gathered from the planning board process may just be rolled into this. And also too, I was wondering, so separate question, I was thinking about something like the Hendry's building, right, and the condos that were built afterward. So that was demolition of the building and something built in its place. What, just as like a thought experiment, if a local historic district had been in place and a commission formed, how might that process or outcome have been different than what it is today? If at all.
It could be different in so many different ways. We specifically chose this area because it followed what the planning committee was doing, the implementation committee were doing. All of those people came and spoke to our committee. We had spoken to the state and got approval for the preliminary bylaw, and now we're moving towards that. There is a map that will be part of it that shows the actual designations. We talked about going a tour and walking, but we're probably not gonna do that. Public tour.
But to more specifically answer your question, those would be the type of things, like that has a mansard roof, that would be something that would, a roof line design that would be appropriate in a historic district.
Okay.
So there's a nod to some classic elements on that, for that building. So the way it steps back, you know, certain things to mitigate the size and to be, to relate to the size and scale of the other buildings. So I think what it would be a planning board, it may come before the planning board. And the way the planning board and the zoning board of appeals sometimes work simultaneously and sort of listen to each other's meetings, and what the ZBA will rule is things that the planning board has made suggestions on. The local historic district would have the final say if there was something that was more significant, but the design guidelines that when we did the overlay zoning for Milton Village, we put in some really good design guidelines. So I think a lot of those will be adopted by the local historic district, would be my expectation, because they're really good, and they talk about the historic character, and you know, a lot of that could be adopted by this committee as well.
So really the local historic district would like the value, or like the value the local historic district would bring, the planning and zoning would be on this aspect of demolition and what is a historic structure designation that would preclude or merit some type of serious look at or debate around whether the demolition would be permissible.
And there would be representatives from different, there's obviously realtors, there'd be someone a business owner would be on this commission, someone, a realtor, it would be an architect would be on it, someone from the historical commission.
Okay.
So it would have all of the knowledgeable people to be on this, but.
And some town people.
And town people, and
From the district.
residents from the district. And I believe, is it at large also?
Yeah, there's one at-large person.
So,
That's a heavier set person.
Mr. Lawford, thank you for coming in. One of the reasons I asked for you to join us is, I recall last year when you were before the board, you were going to submit an article. I just wanted to get an update as to where this all kind of stands, as we talk a lot about development and different changes happening in town. So I have a few questions, and we'll try to go through them one by one. My first question is, on the consultant, why hire a consultant now at the end of 3 to 4 years of work to explain work that they've not been involved in?
I can answer that, is because he can help us over the finish line. The pushback that we have gotten from mostly business owners, was because there was fear that they would lose value in their buildings, they would be delayed, and the opposite is true in fact. And we can't speak to that because we don't have the district yet, but Chris Skelly can.
Second question, with, as you mentioned, Chair Hall, The zoning overlay, our guidelines already, ZBA, planning board. What is the value of this additional board when it sounds that we may be able to put in guidelines or have additions to the zoning instead of having another oversight or regulatory body? What happens if the planning board and the historical commission are on opposite sides of a project? What are the possible conflicts and what's the addition here?
That is addressed in the bylaw. And there's discussion about how those things get worked through, not just between committees, but between people and regulatory groups. So there's going to be a certain pecking order to it. It can go jointly or it could go separately. We were very careful when we put together, we never wanted to be Concord or Nantucket, loved both of those places. But their boards are egregious in the level of control that they have. And Milton has grown for 300 years now, and we just want to have, in another 250 years, have the same flavor in some of the areas. We want to allow growth. I mean, that's what's made Milton better than it was at the beginning.
So, just to further, the guidelines are suggestions. Unfortunately, we have the bylaw, the overlay zoning itself, and then the guidelines are separate, they're outside of the zoning. So we don't have enforcement on those. We can't say, we would like for you to look historic, we would like for you to, reuse, similar materials when you renovate, but there's no enforcement on that. And there's also no control over demolition. So this level gives enforcement, it enforces the guidelines can be enforced, and be very realistic. The article also, what I like about it, it allows the commission to give waivers. So if there's a good reason that, maybe this, one issue, or something that was a concern on one building, it might not be a concern on the other. Waivers can be given to a developer. If there's it gives it for financial reasons. If a developer comes in and said, this is cost prohibitive for me to do something, that commission can grant a waiver. And again, we want to see growth in our communities. We want to see development, but we want to see good development. And I will have to say, J.D. Wild is doing a beautiful job and has a great vision down there. But not every developer who will own property down there is a J.D. Wild, who will care about that level. So this is, if that was the standard for everyone, that's, what he's doing would be basically, what, are what are in our guidelines, and it just would be able to be enforced with other developers who might not really care.
He would be a good member for the next committee, JD.
Yeah, we'd love to have him.
One more question, and this goes to what you mentioned earlier, with community meetings and folks who've had concerns. Can you tell us who's had input into the article, as well as the work of the commission, and who were the community members that you've addressed their issues with, the ones you've met with?
We've been in front of every single committee that is important, and we've talked to other towns, and we've talked to the state. So we have gathered information from every area that we possibly can, because we had the extra time.
What are some of the towns that you've spoken to?
Sudbury, I can't remember the name of all of them. Hingham
was one.
Concord, Cambridge, Acton, just a kind of, we couldn't find a town that's exactly like Milton, but we found towns that were similar. Like Braintree and Canton are dissimilar, and I don't think they have historic districts. They have historic buildings.
Other thoughts from the members, questions?
Couple thoughts. First of all, thank you both. And Mr. Lawfer, I've seen you give presentations on this for a few years now, so thank you for how long you've been at this. I guess I just wanna plant a seed that you can either answer now or think about when this comes back to us, I imagine for our input on warrant article. You know, the tension of where I'm at in thinking through, you know, it's probably not gonna surprise you is on the one hand, the historic, you know, value and choice behind the, you know, the village selection is obvious, to me. The tension I wrestle with is, on the other side, the appetite for some incremental development in that area. Because you guys brought up J.D. Wild, I think to his public comment in January of '26 on this topic. And whether or not, I don't know if those are still his views, but let's just say they could be representative of some, you know, the commercial view, which you've already acknowledged, that another layer, does it deter, you know, the right kind of businesses from wanting to come to that area in the way that we want to attract it. You know, that's the tension. I'm just putting that out there now that I'm trying to personally be more educated on by the time it comes back, you know, for us to take some kind of vote on this. So, you know, that I would welcome more information on, and if it's you repeating yourself, I apologize for that.
No.
But you know,
it's a
now,
And I
legitimate
think that's where
concern.
Chris Skelly can come in and
Yeah.
say, these are the positives, this is why towns do adopt it. And this is what we would be, you know, what it entails,
And the results
And the
from the towns who have
Yeah.
implemented it.
and success stories or, you know, things that are.
We can't talk about that because we don't have it
could you,
yet.
and I'm jumping around, but could you just, the other thing I was gonna ask about was just understanding Chris's background a little bit more.
He worked for Mass Historic.
When we started
Commission.
this, the woman's name was Jennifer Doherty, and she was responsible for reviewing our original proposal, and she took us all the way through the process. She's also moved on. Chris was in her job before her. So I think it's community liaison. I can't remember what their actual term, but there's somebody in the state historic commission who's responsible for towns doing this kind of stuff and being in compliance with state law as well.
And we did reach out to Jen Doherty originally, but because she had worked when she was on the commission to financially now benefit as a consultant, she felt would be a conflict, so she recommended Chris.
Thanks.
I just have a comment similar to Pete's. I just worry about the barriers of having folks come in for business. And I understand that we wanna keep the character of the community, so I think finding that balance and making sure that businesses have a good experience through this process as best we can.
We've talked about a public meeting for just those people, to have them. There's like 10 of them. There might be more, but there's really like 3 of them. And we'd like to be able to actually have them come in and talk and have those conversations before we get to town meeting.
Just a couple of questions. How many buildings does this entail down there? Because some of the buildings you're showing in this are in Boston.
Yeah, this is a
I understand, I'm just saying, how many buildings pertain to this in Milton?
I don't have that in my head, but we did.
We're starting at
It's
Chapman's,
borderline-
Colin Gleason, the building next door is in that historical district, right? High Street,
It's High
High Street is definitely,
yeah, those two buildings at the top of High, I'm just trying to think, what's historical down there?
High Street to Elliott Street and up Adams Street
For how far, the telephone building?
and up.
I think right before that.
I think that the map in the packet outlines it.
No, I understand, I'm just trying to think in my head, Nick.
What's historically,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's right before the
because right at the the storage place, that's Boston behind there, right?
Correct. No, no,
There's
That's
two
part
mill,
of-
there's two mill buildings which sit on the Milton
Milton
side.
side.
yeah,
And what about that building they were supposed to build out front, they have a, handicap ramp now going down there.
Yeah,
Is that-
unfortunately, I've been in touch with Ned, they were all, their permits were all set, ready to start breaking ground, and the real estate market fell apart in 1994.
But there's a handicap ramp there now.
And so they actually purchased an easement from Extra Space Storage, which was negotiated to have that easement, and they've said that should Extra Space want to do a development there, they would work
With,
together, and then,
but I
Yeah,
wanna
sort of
thank
knows, but-
your whole committee, I think it's great.
Yeah. but we wanted to see that building built.
I understand, but everybody's forgetting, they still have to go through the building inspector. Your group might be easy. Do all that work,
yeah.
but there's nothing on the fire to get going down there? To start,
To start that
Well,
project,
the-
no, to start work on some of them buildings?
it's really, right now, there's a plan for, the building across from Bank of America. There's a concept plan there, the JD Wild has a great concept, in doing
Yeah, I
some
saw
things.
that in the thing.
He's also acquired, 60 Adams Street building,
Irwin's,
so there's a plan to keep the commercial there, do residential up above there. That may come first, because there's some issues with being on the river that, he has to pick up the state.
Yeah.
so there's interest down there.
Yeah, oh, there is. And I think the nicer this area becomes, the more attractive to businesses, to answer your question. And that's what I've heard, it's documents, there are multiple reports, that are how this improves an area and financially improves, a neighborhood. That would be the goal.
John, thank you for your question, I didn't think of something else, in addition. If we're talking about, we need to talk about just how the execution of this all works. We're talking about a historical district versus designating buildings as historic. When you're talking about keeping the character of an area, this article is about establishing a historical district committee. Does that committee then create the guidelines that make a new building or renovation historic or in the lines with the historic district? Are you then creating what elements like make this historic or not, or what can't be changed? Is that the next step of this committee, that committee is
We followed the guidelines that the state has given us, and there are specific guidelines that they say. When it's historical, the real specific thing you have to say is one representative building of that style. So you could have 4 of them and 3 of them can go, one has to stay. So the commission would decide which one would represent that. But I don't think that exists in this particular one. I'm just trying to answer the question.
The next committee, the historic district committee that is set up as a result of this bylaw could do nothing and just take projects on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
And approve them or not approve them. And if they're not approved, they can't get a building permit. If they're approved, they can get a building permit. Subject to all the other regulations that are in place. The committee could also say, let's establish some design guidelines so applicants know what to expect from our process. It's not a requirement that they do so, but they could. And then they should kind of stick to that, but that would be one of the steps that the next committee establishes a result of this bylaw could take forward.
Does that need to be named in the article here? What happens in the next step?
It's authorized in the article. They're allowed to establish guidelines and other regulations as that committee sees.
Well, not in terms of the allowed, we need to make that.
That they shall.
Should be required, that they shall. Maybe
One of the
maybe that's a
parts that
discussion
we-
at town meeting.
One of the parts that we added since the first town meeting and now was what repercussions, what someone who is not approved, what the process is. And we defined that within the new bylaw.
Where does the funding for like a consultant like this come from?
Gotta find it under the shell.
Yeah.
I think that was a new.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay, John.
So you could make buildings that are just operating the way they are to try to be historical, right? You
They are
can't
already.
demand them to change their facial and all that stuff, right? Under this,
No, no,
you wouldn't have a they can stay the same.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they would stay the same.
Yeah.
It's only when it changed, like, it's grandfathered in, if you have bad electric, as long as you don't do anything in the house, you're fine with your bad electric.
Yeah, alright, that's, I just
Yeah.
don't want you to force,
No,
like
No
F.A.
forcing,
King to do
no
something,
forcing. Not,
or the dentist group there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
We wanted to make sure that, some of the towns are just egregious in the way that they demand, and it costs more to do those things, and it slows the process down.
thank you. Maybe in 10 years we'll see this on Chronicle.
That'll be Brian. Brian will present that day.
You've seen Chronicle and Tim with the any other thoughts or questions from the members? Process question, Mr. Milano. For there to be a formal submission for the request of a consultant, what would be the next steps?
I think it's been submitted, so it's a question of whether the select board has the appetite to fund it. I would be reluctant to start spending new money on July 21st of a new fiscal year.
As would I.
We were in a different kind of position last year because we had significant vacancies in our budget that we knew would take some time to fill, but this year, you know, it's a place where we're expecting to have everybody for the whole year. Not gonna wait to Cody and others. No, but I think, so
There's no
I
more
can-
magic hat?
I can report back on August 4th if that would be helpful. And
Yes, this table is till August 4th. I also would not want to just throw this out there in a meeting before a vote without some further discussion or consideration. Just want to know the next steps in the process. This table at 4th.
Our next meeting is August 3rd, so it's August 4th.
Planning board now, we'll cash laying around, just throwing it out there.
we wish, yeah. We're recodifying our zoning, cast.
All right.
All right, thank
No more
you.
questions?
No,
Thank you.
That's great,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
so
you.
much. Many will stay.
All right. I'll check Mark next, okay? And perhaps the best way to go through this, Nick, you wanna just walk us through each of these, and your thoughts, and then we can kind of respond or, yeah?
So a couple of these I did prepare and have drafts in the packet. So starting with the appropriation for water main improvements, and I'll pull that up on slide in a minute. We have a request from the DPW engineering to appropriate additional money for water main projects. We typically appropriate about $600,000 each year at annual town meeting. And however, we have access to more money than that from the MWRA right now. There's upwards of $4 million that the town may access from the MWRA at a 10-year no interest loan. So DPW engineering is interested in bringing forward accessing that appropriation and that grant money or that loan money available to address a couple of water main projects on Governors Road as well as Franklin and Bassett Streets. Just with the work that's going on in those areas, well, Franklin and Bassett in particular, with the work that's going on there, doing the water main while the disruption is happening, rather than coming back in a couple of years to stop disrupting that neighborhood again. So this is a draft article. I'll just note that we're still looking at it it's bringing forward projects that we anticipated happening in later years, so it has a knock-on effect into what the operating budget of that water enterprise fund can absorb, which then would translate to higher than expected rate increases. So I will have a recommendation from the board on August fourth, but that's the crux of what the request is borrowing additional money from MWRA to tackle a few more water main projects sooner rather than later. Governor's Road, Franklin, Bassett Streets, beyond the projects they had already kind of lined up. So we're still working through the cash flow and the impacts of the operating budget, so I'll report back on August fourth with the recommendation that we have to take any questions.
When they're doing that building, you couldn't get them to help you do the water main?
They're helping with the road and the pavements, but the water main was not part of the conditions of the permit.
But will they do a full, like, replacement of the roadway, like,
Yes, that's part of the,
like full depth reconstruction or just like a mill and pave or, I mean, I assume if you're doing water main work, it's like a full,
after the amount of work that will have been done on those two streets between Eversource, National
Yeah.
Grid, us stormwater
like
work.
everybody's going in there,
To touch it, so we're gonna end it with
okay,
in that vicinity. So that's the
Good.
scope, it's just we're concerned in terms of financial impacts on the operating budgets that then would translate to impacts on water rates, so we just want to look into that math.
And what's the deal with Governors right now? What's their road condition?
The lower end, right?
The lower end, right, yeah,
Okay.
sorry, the lower end, it's that main has experienced issues.
Okay.
So it's that is really driving it, it's just the breaks that we've had in that area. In terms of infrastructure.
Okay.
So that increase from 1,179,000 that we used to, that was previously appropriate, or that's currently appropriated, to get to the 2,280. Is any, the one thing I was just confused at, is any of that just outright grant money, or is it all borrowed money?
On the water side, from the MWRA, we access 10-year no interest loans.
Okay.
On the sewer side, they incentivize sewer work more because it reduces their costs on the back end as it mitigates additional treatment flow that they have to treat. So on the sewer side, it's 75% loan, 25% grant, and they provide more in funding. So that's close to $1.1 million on an annual basis, of which it's 75% loan, 25% grant.
Do you have a capital needs statement on like water mains in the town?
Yes, DPW has a rolling 10-year capital plan for water that they
Okay.
have been trying to stick to. As I think it goes through 29, I believe.
I'll ask you about that when you check in.
Alright, let's move to the next one.
Right, the next one is blank in terms of the language in the article. Just the purpose is that if the board remembers a couple of months ago when, or maybe last month when Amy was here talking about the surplus bond proceeds, we applied a bunch of surplus bond proceeds to fiscal year 2026 debt service. So those were projects that had less than $50,000 or less of surplus bond proceeds. If there are projects that have more than $50,000 of money left over after completion, or the project was abandoned and not done, for whatever reason, if we brought in money for a project and we have money left that is greater than $50,000, to do something with that requires a vote at the town meeting. So we have identified a couple of potential surplus proceeds that we would like to take and apply to a different project. So it's more or less a housekeeping item. It's just we're trying to work with Concom to identify the proper way to do so. So we're working to wrap that up, and hopefully we'll have that ready on August 4th. If not, we would just pull it out of this town meeting. But the goal is to have it done for this town meeting. These are some older borrowings for projects that, for one reason or another, the money wasn't needed, but we borrowed the money from the markets, so we just need to address it to do the financial cleanup. And then the next Next one is, this is a recommendation regarding the current year budget appropriations. In fiscal 27 state aid, payment to the town, that came in $363,000 above what was expected. So there are a couple of options. We could do nothing. We could just receive additional state aid and reduce the tax levy that we assess the taxpayers. Alternatively, we could increase our appropriations to make up that $363,000. What this article proposes to do, what I would suggest is that we do increase our appropriations and put this money into the reserve fund. As we just discussed with the fiscal year closeout, the reserve fund will be available to, with the approval of the warrant committee, to be transferred out for extraordinary unanticipated expenses. With the snow and ice year we just had, we were fortunate that fiscal 26 expenses ran light, but in a year where they didn't, we could have more of a problem. So one thought that I had was to move this money into the reserve fund, sit it there, hopefully not have too many things that come up that we need it for. Ideally, it goes unspent, but in a worst case scenario, it is there accessible through the market. And I'll just note, in terms of the reserve fund, we have facilities working through a boiler issue at Cunningham. One of their two boilers may be completely out of commission, so that is an example of an unexpected expense that we may have to undertake. The schools can run on one boiler, but it means we have no redundancy. So the facilities department is working through that, whether it could be a repair, or if it would need to be replaced with that really substantial expense that would need to be borne by the town and school budget already in this fiscal year. We certainly didn't anticipate some of this.
Just one quick question out of
Sure.
curiosity. I totally understand if you didn't look at this, but did our increase in state aid, was it comparable to other similarly situated towns in terms of the increases others received? I mean, was that pretty methodical how that happens, or are we kind of receiving it differently?
No, I think at this point with the Student Opportunity Act, which was a change to the Chapter 70 formula, at this point, when additional money is appropriated by the state to Chapter 70 education and aid in the other categories, it's pretty much shared kind of equally, so we're not an outlier on the high end or low end. I think there's been some talk about changing some of the state formulas, but for this year, there was just more money generally put into the state aid accounts, which translated to additional money. And we estimated it pretty conservatively, and also just stuck to the government's budget, and also in the Senate increased those expenditures to our benefit as well as the citizens.
If we put this money in reserve fund, say we don't use it for snow or ice or a boiler, then at some point it could go into capital projects.
Yes,
Would it have
it
to-
would.
Would it have to go back to town meeting
It
for
would
that?
close out, it would contribute to next year's free cash calculation that would then give us flexibility in the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So yes, in the long term.
Yes, not this year.
For community preservation, committee appropriations, the CPC met last night and are recommending an appropriation of $300,000 for the Tucker School playground project go to the fall town meeting. So we will work with CPC to pull that article together, but so they voted on that last night, so it is being submitted to fall. We just need to put the language behind that article together. And the purpose of that, the Tucker PTO group was advocating for getting this money in early so that they would be able to potentially line up the project for summer 2027 construction. If we waited to our regular routine of annual town meeting votes to appropriate CPC money, we wouldn't have been able to take advantage of potential summer project next year. So this is good news, and I'm sure they're happy to hear it. Then we've still a little bit work to wrap up the full project's budget, but this gets another big piece of the puzzle put together.
Great.
The next two are kind of commingled, library college acquisition and appropriation, so we're working with town council to have a draft article just prepared, and obviously depending on how that shakes out, we'll have to see exactly what that language looks like, but there's a fairly standard article language for land acquisitions that KP has recommended, and then we would just plug in the particulars for the Milton example, if that moves forward. And as I indicated at a prior meeting, discussing with the school building committee whether they need a new appropriation or to amend a prior appropriation to take on some design work going forward of the library site if we do acquire it and it is moving forward as a school project. So we'll have to get some resolution on that in the next couple of weeks. Fire Station Building Committee is meeting on July 28th to discuss the next steps on Atherton. We expect an article for fall town meeting. Again, these are fairly standard articles, so we will just work with town council to wrap that up and have that ready for August 4th, assuming there's no change in their game plan for this year. And the planning board is meeting again on Thursday to discuss, among other things, the short-term rentals bylaw that they're working through. They're seeking some comments from staff, which is something we're working to turn around now, to regulate short-term rentals. The way this is currently drafted is it would require that short-term rentals would only be authorized for owner-occupied or owner-adjacent. So, you own the building, you own the house and you rent it out, or you own you live in the ADU and you rent out the primary dwelling or some other kind of arrangement. So it does target and allow only for those kinds of situations with occupants going forward. And there's other elements in terms of inspections and other regulatory aspects that we're reviewing internally to provide some feedback to the planning board on. And the next two we would.
Sorry, one
Sure.
thing, we may talk about that a few times, but if there's like a particularly substantive day we're talking about that article when it comes to us, I was thinking it may make sense to have one of the town councils there, potentially, who's been pretty deeply involved in the drafting of that.
No, Carolyn Murray from PA Law has been very involved and drafted it, so we could certainly ask her for a special conversation.
And can I ask a question? In current state, are there any short-term rentals that we're aware of that have not owner occupancy? They're just fully vacant?
So right now, technically,
I think I know of one, but
they are not,
it's up, yeah.
none are permitted whatsoever.
Okay,
Now, they are operating,
okay.
so we don't quite know who's operating what, how often. The DOR the Department of Revenue has a list of those that are registered with the state. I think there's about 74 properties on their list. They don't, we've asked for addresses in Milton.
That's kind of a lot.
Since it's caveat with, those are the ones that have chosen to register, have
Okay.
done the right thing and registered with the state. It's since the beginning of the program where you have to register with the state, so it's not an annual list, it's kind of a cumulative list. So we don't have good data on it, is the bottom line, I guess what I'm trying to
It
say.
could no longer be functioning,
So
yeah.
there could be more than 74 folks that have not registered, and there could be 74 registered but not 74 operating.
Yeah, we really don't know, unfortunately.
And can I ask a follow-up question? What are the downsides to the non-owner occupancy? Like, I'm just wondering, some of these potentially are, owned by people who live in Michigan or something. How would we rectify that?
So the way the new bylaw as drafted proposes to be allowed to operate in Milton, you have to register. So then you have to prove that you're an owner occupant. In terms of the downside of owner, in the downside of allowing non-owner occupied Airbnbs and everything else is the idea of, companies or LLCs coming in and buying properties and taking housing off the market in order to operate as short-term rentals. That's impacting our housing market negatively for their, short-term.
Okay, thank you.
Or like, they were like running hotels or something, yeah.
In West meant to be a single family home or two families. I will just note that I think in some of our initial conversations is in what the bylaw as currently drafted requires an inspection by town staff prior to being allowed to operate, as well as annual inspections. So if there are 74, that's 74 additional inspections, building, fire, health have to do on an annual basis. That's a significant burden on top of limited staff and limited resources. So trying to think about ways to want to be partners in that regulatory environment, but also being cognizant of the pressures that we put these departments under. And for fire, as an example, I have a lieutenant for fire prevention who does all of this work. So that's one employee. So it just adds a significant burden. And part of the problem being the lack of data. But if it's 5, it's probably manageable. If it's 100, less manageable. So it's just not knowing what the turnout will be is part of what makes this tricky. And the other 2 articles that are listed are related back to that short-term rentals. The first one would allow us to collect a local auction hotel rooms tax on them, and the next one would allow the town, if it wanted to impose an additional 3%, up to 3% community impact fee on short-term rentals as well. So that's where the local revenue would be derived from, in addition to the fees that are included in the bylaw.
Can I ask another question? If we become aware of non-owner occupancy units that are happening now, how do we take action to get these into compliance? With the new bylaw, if it
With the new bylaw, it would, I believe it's a non-criminal disposition. I'd have to look at it. It's a fine.
Okay.
And I think those can start to add up. But I can't really verify. Just I'm not speaking too much.
Thank you.
And the last article that's not listed on the agenda, the other one that we have been notified about, and I was aware I just completely blanked on it for drafting the agenda, is again more of a housekeeping zoning article related to the MBTA Communities Act zoning. If you recall that conversation, as I'm sure we all dearly do recall, an element of it was the affordability requirements. So the state regulations allowed only 10% allowed cities and towns to put a requirement that only 10% of units be affordable, unless you could demonstrate with a economic feasibility analysis that a project in your community could support a higher affordability requirement. So Milton, through MAPC, did an economic feasibility analysis that the planning board reviewed that determined that yes, projects in Milton could support a 15% affordability requirement at 80% of the area median income. That triggers language in our existing bylaw to put that into effect once EO, HLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities approved it, which they have. So right now, if you're in the MBTA Communities District, you have a project of 18 or more, you're required under our zoning to build it at least 15% of the units being affordable. The article that's been submitted by the planning board would just strike the reference to the 10% affordability requirement that is no longer in play. So it's really a housekeeping item. What is currently in effect and remains in effect is the 15% affordability, because we did the work to do the economic feasibility analysis. This article would just strike the now no longer relevant 10% requirement of that.
This is our first run through the article. Any more? Any thoughts, questions? All right, let's move to item 8. Discussion and approval of select board goals and objectives. We've had this for a couple of weeks now. Any points or changes folks would like to make, or edits to any of the language? If not, I will take a motion to approve.
Just, can I ask one question first about striking 2.2, which was the sort of an economic development committee. Is the thinking there that the work will just live with the consultant and the two board, the select board and planning board? Without a central committee?
I didn't realize we struck that out.
I took that as we didn't need a committee since we're just beginning to complete the economic development plan. I thought that would be the next step, is how I read that. Listening to it to be different.
I think it came from the conversation of, we're gonna focus on doing that work with the planning board as you alluded to, so the idea that having the second committee was being deprioritized as a goal. Maybe it would still be a goal depending on the work of that plan, or, so I think,
So-
that's where it came from
yeah.
in terms of taking it out, was our understanding was having the select board, planning board work on that together as a group rather than having a committee for it, but I obviously have no preference.
Okay, I sort of interpreted the opposite. I mean, I'm happy to have some flexibility on it. I think the decision here is sort of advance the economic development plan through appropriate coordination between select board and planning board. That's probably the track it's on. The alternative path would be formation of an economic development subcommittee with select board and planning board representation to, have a bit, it's a different path of, advancing the same work in arguably a more scheduled way, but maybe not, depending on what people's vision is for option A.
So if I could just add, I think it would be valuable to do an analysis of how an economic development committee would bring value to the town. Other cities and towns in the Commonwealth do have distinct economic development committees. I also think that it wouldn't necessarily make sense to have a formation of an economic development committee until the plan is complete, right? Like what if there were a way for us to, while having the economic development plan in progress, kind of do our due diligence for what do we need out of this committee, and what are some comps for formation so that we get the governance right. But I do think that we should have a committee or have a really good reason for not having a committee that we've at least evaluated fully, whether it makes sense for us.
Does that mean we wanna make edits to these goals, or are we okay with it as is? I would agree that I think the committee comes after the economic development plan. And that's, we see what comes out of the plan, given that, we'll talk about this later, but we haven't taken the next step to finish the scope, as well as, put it back out to the consultant and give a timeline. If it's even completed in this year before we're back again talking about our goals and objectives, that committee may be on next year's goals depending on timeline for this economic development plan. I also think it doesn't preclude us from, when we get the plan, to say we should form a committee next. So,
Could we add to the scope of the work to
form a committee.
No, not to form the committee, but to evaluate evaluate the deployment of such committees, like how do they function, right? Like, let's look at like Wellesley, let's look at Natick, let's look at where, I don't know, I can't rattle off the top of my head. I mean, I could probably even just do
we can.
this on ChatGPT in like a night, right?
We
But-
may be able to broaden it and say.
Yeah,
And when we, in the scope that we get at the end of it, recommendations for implementation.
yeah,
So if it's a committee, or if there are other methods for best practices for these things to actually come to fruition in the economic development plan, that we have that from the consultant saying, these are the potential next steps for Milton to take.
I don't think that's a big revision of the scope, because from what I recall, the scope currently recommends the town create
yeah.
such a committee. So I don't know what the consultant plans to do to support that. I don't remember how it's phrased, but I'm following, that makes sense. So it could be an outcome of the plan, but nonetheless, doesn't need to be, an existing goal until we're clear the timing on it.
It could be part of like an implementation roadmap.
Yeah.
Which too few plans have.
Yeah, I think my goal would just be to make sure that the work continues on in a streamlined manner. So we-
How many committees is this gonna be, Nick?
There's,
A
one
million.
fewer right now.
Huh?
One fewer than there could have been.
We're gonna need another Cody to just stick with the committees.
We wanna have as many jobs for as many people in this town who wanna volunteer.
We have so much talent in our town.
I agree with you.
We do.
We'll have to have the meetings at 5 o'clock at night.
Oh
Yeah.
geez, oh geez.
Yes. So John, you don't wanna be put on this one?
I'll be on the committee, I don't mind, I'm just a question, how many do we have?
Yeah, no.
A lot.
Eventually, we're gonna have to make a decision.
But
Yes,
next year,
yes.
next year,
Next year.
next year.
Alright, if there aren't any more edits.
I was not, so I feel like I should
We don't have to
flag
edit.
one. No, not related to this,
Okay.
on a potential edit. So
Okay.
Kate wrote some of these, so I just wanna say, because it's about me, I don't want it to be presumptuous. So 4.9 is complete negotiations for town administrator and successor employment agreement. I just wanna flag the zones that you will want to extend these, so we can change that language that the board has to make a decision by December 31st on whether to extend the town administrator and then complete negotiations,
I thought successor meant that Cody was like the TA waiting.
The succession plan,
Yeah. Okay,
or like the
so
show Succession.
tweak that according to
I will take a motion to approve if anyone's.
Move-
Go ahead, no, you
Move
go.
to approve the select board goals and objectives.
Second,
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Driscoll. Alright, Mr. Driscoll, your vote.
yes,
Mr. Robuchon.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Sagri.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Alright, we'll move to item 9. Discussion of the contract with PMA Consultants for the Owners Project Management Services, otherwise known as the OPM, for the MSBA project. Mr. Milano, if you wanna walk us through this one.
Yeah, I think we reported on this previously, so the selection of PMA consultants by the school building committee has been approved. This action item is now to approve the contract with PMA. So they can begin their work, and this OPM would be assigned to working on the MSBA aspect of any potential school project, not working currently on anything related to libraries, so there's a clear kind of demarcation of responsibilities there. So they're preparing their work to continue to progress that MSBA project.
Questions, thoughts, concerns from the members? If there are none, I will accept the motion.
Move to approve the contract with PMA Consultants for Owner Project Management Services.
second,
Motion made and seconded, Mr. Driscoll.
yes,
Mr. Robuchon.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Sagri.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
John, you get the next one.
Alright, that brings us, we already had our committee report, so we've had the school building committee report, unless you'd like to add anything, Pete?
Nothing further.
Good, alright. Housing Production Plan Advisory Committee, that is myself and Ms. Nolan. I can speak to the first hour, because I had to leave a little early. We met with the consultant who provided the housing needs assessment. That is the first step in the first draft. All of the members have it. We were able to submit some suggestions and comments during the meeting. Others are reviewing it for even more comments. One of those people is myself. I'll be submitting some comments this week, tomorrow morning most likely. And we've established a timeline as well as sort of an overview for what we need for the housing production. But I would say I think it gives us in a good place and we're moving forward. So,
I think we just, community engagement piece, is pretty key, so I think that would be important for our town members to kind of just weigh in as well.
so far, I think it's a very well done plan. Going through and reviewing it, a lot of great information about the changes in the town over the last 10 years. Some of it very striking, particularly in expense and wealth, but so far very well done and very optimistic. All right, that's all that committees we talked about those since. Item 11. Mr. Oversheim about the establishment of a traffic mitigation subcommittee. Mr. Oversheim, do you want to kick us off with this?
Yeah, so we're reestablishing, John, this is not a new committee,
Right,
yeah.
we haven't had a meeting yet.
So I urge the board to consider moving forward with this advisory committee. My thinking here and what I'm proposing is, I don't think I need to spend much time on emphasizing how critical it is to focus on ever-growing traffic concerns. It's the issue I heard most about while campaigning and continue to hear most about. I think there's a lot of good people, extremely talented subject matter experts in town already working on the topic in different ways. And I think, the Randolph Ave Road Diet is a success story of, the different stakeholders and expertise from residents in moving that solution forward. I think a next step in the town is, proceeding with the tool design, traffic calming policy and plan, which is it's getting out of the gate now. I mean, that's happening. Where I'm focused is ensure, what structure can we have in place to ensure the work around that. The report proceeds well, there's community engagement aspects to it, there's potentially a lot of work to it. But also recommendations are conveyed back to this board and the traffic commission in a way that is prioritized. And there's probably a lot of implementation work. And when I thought about the need for this committee, I thought about what to me seemed like a really strong traffic mitigation report back in 2020 that wasn't fully implemented for whatever reason. I think there was a lot to that report, and it just shows it, and there's really some real experts working on that at the time, but it just shows the amount of work that's involved, I think, in running with these reports when they come back. I also thought quite a bit and gathered perspectives in town from leaders in the town staff department about whether to try to support the advancement of this report through this separate subcommittee or just through the traffic commission. And I can speak to that more. But in short, I think the staffing of this committee is meant to, overlap with the traffic commission and include enough of those experts so there's good synergy with the two commission. And Tool will also report to the traffic commission 3 times during this process. So I think this will increase the chances of our ability to take this report and run with it in an area that's critically important. And I include here at the end examination after the report for whether we keep this committee going for a space for continued long-term traffic planning for the town. You know, so happy to answer any questions about it. You know, and separately, this is goal number 3.2 for us, so if we don't launch this, we're not meeting our goals.
There you go,
Thank you, Pete.
already on the hook.
So the members, questions, comments?
Alright, so Pete, you throw something like this out there, you're gonna get feedback from me,
Sure.
right? So I think this is really good, and just what we need. Because as you say, we will end up having an analysis of traffic in the town, hot spots, and then my understanding is a potential menu of items that could be deployed as mitigation for various hotspots, right? So I think when you have an analysis like this and a level of expectation raised, you definitely do wanna have some governance and prioritization around like what's gonna get handled when. And that could very quickly overwhelm the traffic commission, right, in its day-to-day work. I would suggest consideration, you know, where you have bulleted, for like the tasks of the committee, you know, where it says providing feedback, supporting tool design. I think it might be a good idea to also include, you know, in analyzing data to monitor outcomes and changes. Just to kind of keep that in the forefront so that we're able to say with certainty one direction or the other, whether the change helped, right? Because you're gonna have, again, identification of hotspots, so like, yes, in fact, there is a problem, so you'll have like that baseline problem looked at. You'll have a menu of mitigating items, but then there's a question of, was it effective, right? So you don't end up in like a, kind of like a doom loop of like, let's keep trying these things. And then the other question is, you know, I don't know for like Nick and like the town side, but monitoring capital spend or, you know, if any financial resources have to be put toward any of the interventions or items that you select, like is that ever gonna be a challenge that you run up against? Just food for thought. And then in terms of proposed membership, I like these suggestions. I might also, so I like the director of public works or their designee is in there. I would also try to ensure that like both somebody from engineering and construction and safety engineering are able to be at the table for decision making. Because even within DPW, people do like very different things. If you want to get decisions made quickly. And then the other question is, I would imagine, and again, the plan's not done yet, but when you identify some of these hotspots, I would put some money on some of the hotspots are gonna be in areas where there are like across jurisdictions. So as you get close to the border with the city, right, as you as you get closer to, you know, highway access points or DCR properties, those might be some of your trickiest hotspot areas. So, I don't think you necessarily have to have somebody on the committee that, you know, folks who are from those other agencies, but it might be a good idea to contemplate, like, you know, weaving them into meetings and stuff, cause you'll need their, you may end up needing their support to like deploy the intervention.
That's why we have you.
I can help where or as long as it doesn't violate my conflict of interest, but, those are just things I would look toward. But I think on the whole, it's like there's nothing I would take out, there's just maybe things I would think of or add.
A thorough line of questioning.
Or just like a stream of consciousness.
No, I, at risk of interrupting any other
Yeah.
questions, I, in addition to being better stated than I probably could have written it, the one probably difference we have thinking about it is some of that work, I had in my mind of a sort of next phase, when I say in here, you know, basically contemplate the longevity of this committee.
Yeah,
You know, I think there will be a point where hopefully we have, you know, internalized sort of the tool design recommendations about how we sort of structure traffic calming decisions in town and implement the recommendations we want from that. There may be a time to consider, okay, do the individual project decisions, you know, is this committee working on that or is that traffic commission? And so that, some of your suggestions, I wonder, you know, where that point is, you know, is that getting in almost like a phase 2 for this committee? But
yeah.
most of them, I think, are pretty clear and will be great additions here, so we can plug those in for sure. I'm just trying to, your membership recommendations sounded smart, and Nick, you know, you chime in too if you have views otherwise, but.
I think I would expect DPW to be heavily involved, whether they're explicitly on the committee or staffing the meeting. I mean, it's the commissioner, town engineer, and assistant town engineer, and that's it. So
Okay.
I think between the three of them, I would expect participation, whether explicitly on the committee or not. So I think it's covered, or you could expand it to say with staff support from some key staff, including town engineer, assistant town engineer, director of planning, in terms of not necessarily expected to be members, but expected to be relied upon to provide feedback to the committee and meet with them as needed. And then I think the engagement with the state agencies, I do wonder if that should actually just be part of the goals that the committee works on, because I think that's a good point in terms of engagement with.
You're gonna run into that so fast.
Good.
Yeah, if the feedback is below sparkling in certain areas,
Yeah.
having that as a goal, I think, or an action item early on with this goal, this might be a way to address it.
I will also, I'm sure it's top of mind, but remember my fellow member, Mr. Driscoll, that may have been some interest in being on this too, but, yeah.
Yeah, but Megan wanted to be
Oh,
too.
yeah, well, you know, I
My road, I got 24-hour traffic, so her road starting to get it. You know what I mean?
yeah, well,
If she, could
I just
be-
wanna see the work get done in
Well,
town, that's my
I
goal.
would, step down, let you get in it.
It's okay. You got your 24-hour
I can
traffic.
always tell you two what I think.
we
You're gonna
can,
have to have your meetings the same
So
time,
shy. Yeah.
the traffic commissioner has it. Cause a lot of them people are gonna be on your committee. DPW director, right, the engineer.
So,
we can polish up this,
well,
yeah.
do we wanna, are we okay to move forward with being okay with the establishment and then some polishing of, as written, but knowing that it will be established moving forward? So, okay with that?
Yeah.
If that's okay, then I'll take a motion to,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the establishment of a traffic mitigation subcommittee. And they're
Subject to some.
subject to some edits Pete might make, but yeah,
Second.
Motion made, second.
Second,
Mr. Driscoll.
yes.
Mr. Obasharma.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Second.
yes.
And myself, yes.
Alright. Good job, Pete. Get your first
Thank
committee.
you for your work, Pete.
Thank you.
It's gonna be great.
Alright, let's go to 12. Mr. Milano, you can take us through the Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Yes, we have received a resurgence of interest in the Bicycle Advisory Committee. We are doing some homework and trying to figure out charge and composition. The committee has been established since 1999. We haven't laid our hands on an explicit charge. So unless there's any objection from the board, we plan to put together a charge and bring forward a list of applicants for the board's consideration at the meeting on August 4th. I tried to pull some together, just didn't succeed for this evening, but we'll plan to do both in terms of potential applicants as well as a charge, just to kind of formalize their goal and composition.
Without any questions or concerns, I will take a motion to sort of re-engage the Bicycle Advisory Committee with documents to be presented on our next meeting.
I make a motion to reestablish a bicycle advisory committee.
Motion made
Second. Oh,
and seconded by Ms. Haggerty. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes,
Mr. Overshawn.
Yes.
Yes.
Second.
yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. We'll move to item 13. Discussion update approval of boards and committees. I think we only have one to the Commission on Disability appointment of Joe Fundling. I'm gonna take some time here for discussion because I believe some members have been contacted about this appointment. So I will leave it open for any discussions or questions from members. That's myself or Mr. Milano. Mr. Driscoll.
Mr. Daly, I would like to table this if you would all agree, so you could get together with Mrs. Agostino about this. I'm not against the applicant, please, I'm not against the applicant. Just that she reached out to me a couple times today, asking if we could table it till Nick and Mr. Winston Daly can sit down and talk with her.
Other thoughts from the members?
I also had a nice conversation with Ms. DiTilio Agostino. So I do have some questions. So is that committee fully staffed? And if so, this is what I'm confused on. Is this the final application to fill out that committee? And does that preclude anyone else from applying if they so choose to apply? But I also do Miss DiTilio Agostino did mention she did want to talk more about the committee. But I have my own questions about, like, can more people participate in this if they need to or want to?
Am I okay in assuming that the questions from the members are similar about composition and tabling?
In process.
Process. Right. So I'll share my view on this and how it's come together, just so the board has some of the history from my perspective. Ms. Milano, please jump in where I may be missing something. The application was sent in May. We had, some full agendas and weren't able to handle that appointment and some of the other ones, so we technically should have appointed this perhaps a month or two previous. The chair, Ms. DiTilio Agostino, was made aware of the applicant. She later, this month of July, shared that she wanted to wait. She also asked for an appointment of another person who had not submitted an application. So we have an applicant, another person was asked to be appointed, and then she did request, once we were going to move forward with this applicant as an appointee, she did request that we meet, speak about the composition. She was worried about having quorum. She had folks that were not coming to the meetings, and so my answer to her, in support of Mr. Milano, was that I did not feel that appointing this applicant precluded us from having a conversation about the makeup of the board. The board is, with the state charge, a minimum of 5 members, a maximum of 13. I believe that this member would give them 5 or 6. And my feeling is that when an applicant applies and goes through the process, they're going through one process. For us to let an application sit and then after the process change the rules of the process is not fair to an applicant. And so my view is that we can continue to have a talk about folks who are not attending. If there are folks not attending the committee does need to be smaller, and then we can work on those changes, but that we should not reject an applicant or table one applicant for our review without a timeline, without a review, without an applicant having been told ahead of time that this would have been the case. I just think that's an unfair process. The conversations with the chair, not against it, that was shared in our correspondence via email. I am a little disappointed, I'm just gonna be honest, I'm a little disappointed that after our conversation that the chair would have contacted every member of the select board directly. You're free to do it, you're a voter, you're a committee member here, you're a citizen, but I think the sort of process of that bothers me a bit. In that she was in communication with myself and Mr. Milano over the past few days, and our stance was made pretty clear. This does not change the work of the committee. This is a young person who is trying to be civically engaged, a young person with disabilities that wants to be a part of our civic process. So I'm then particularly sensitive to us telling a young person that they should wait as we change the rules, perhaps, or review the rules, and that this appointment and our process can only bolster the committee. So that is my stance and why I asked for it to be on the agenda tonight, is that it was submitted under one set of rules. We have been asked to pause it to then change the rules, which I do not think is a good, clear, and transparent process. Nick, did I miss anything?
No, I would just say in terms of covering process again, what we typically do will, applicants will fill out the board and committee form online. It comes to an inbox that is managed by myself and Lynn. Lynn will go in and share the applications with the boards and committees, just requesting any feedback that they might have. And then generally they'll appear on the agenda in the coming weeks or months to be appointed. So that's generally the process that we undergo and adhere to here in terms of we got the application, shared it with the Commission on Disabilities. We honestly would have brought it forward sooner, but it fell off my radar, to be honest, and Joe phoned me and reached out just to say, hey, just checking on my application, and reminded us to follow up on it. So that is how we kind of typically handle these. It's not necessarily looking for committee's approval or veto of applicants, more just requesting their feedback, alerting them that the select board may make an appointment, and that will be brought forward to a future subcommittee.
So for like process going forward, right, like if, so a concern I would have had was, you know, is anyone else like shut out of this? It sounds like no. And then there's still opportunity for the chair to help manage the membership of the rest of the committee by having some conversations about like, hey, are you still really available for this? You know, we need you there to make a quorum. So it just sounds like So no, this isn't disqualifying any additional interested parties. It also doesn't preclude sort of cleaning up the rest of the membership or structure. And you can still we can still add additional appointees at any time.
Yeah, still room on the committee for additional people, still space for the chair to have a conversation with us if there are folks who have not been able to attend with the struggles with getting quorum. If those folks need to step down or be asked to step down, and for the chair to reconfigure the membership. So yeah, we would have, I think, 6 members, maximum is 13. All conversations remain open. I'll just reiterate again, I thought the idea of having an applicant in the pipeline who should have been appointed perhaps a few months ago, but we dropped off our radar to then have that applicant be punished and sidelined again, I think is bad process from us, and it's just my.
Mr. Daly, thank you for explaining that. That's not what I got, and I'm sorry.
No,
I'm ready to move forward.
any questions or thoughts from you? All right,
Yeah.
I will take a motion if anyone's.
What just one addition, I mean, I also spoke with Ms. D'Agostino today, and it was a good conversation. And hear her, I don't fully understand her up to speed on some of the membership challenges she's having, the important work of the committee. But I do think we can, in various ways, and sign me up if I can be helpful, find ways to support her in that, and offer be a sounding board or support through those challenges. But those aside, I don't think there's a process reason not to, move forward with this stellar applicant. I put a lot of thought into that myself after a good conversation too, so.
Make a motion?
All right, motion made,
Second,
motion made and seconded. Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Overshawer.
yes.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
And myself, yes, and just for a schedule point of us meeting with the chair, sort of windows, the committee does not meet in the summer. So I believe their earliest meeting will be September or October, and we are certainly open to meeting with the chair, before that next meeting, so we can talk about the committee and its composition moving forward, so.
Thank
all.
you.
All right, discussion approval meeting minutes, June 23rd, 2026. I will take a motion unless there are any edits.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes, June 23rd, 2026.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Hagerty. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Overshawer.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right. Item 15, town administrators reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, not a ton since our meeting last week. Just a note that for folks who are interested in Pepperley Playground projects, so site preparation was performed and completed. Again, at no cost to the town by Charlie Bosworth and his group. The contractor under contract with the town to install the playground equipment has mobilized. Playground equipment is going up. We expect our work to be completed over the next, hopefully 4 to 6 weeks and maybe sooner. But that is coming along, and equipment is starting to go up. And please don't go over the fence to climb it, but sooner it'll be ready very soon. So excited to see that progress. Thank you. That's really.
All right, chair's report, not much has happened in, last time since we saw each other. One item I will flag for our members is we have received recently a decent number of emails about Flock cameras. Flock, the company, and the cameras, and we do have a number of them here in Milton. I did sit with the police chief about them later last week to find out how we use them, how it's protected, how we save the data, but that conversation of us one-to-one is certainly not enough for the citizens concerned. So we may be asking the chief to come in, perhaps not this next meeting, but perhaps our September meeting to discuss Flock cameras, how we use them, how he sees the police using those cameras going forward, how we protect our residents, even as we are concerned about safety and the crimes that it's been able to help us solve. But with that, the flock cameras becoming more and more in the news and discussed in the communities, I do think that's the important thing for the chief to come in and share. So I wanted to flag that for everyone, as well as the folks that have sent us the emails and others who may have been thinking about it.
No, I just,
I have a question about the data. Does Flock own the data or do we own the data?
My understanding is that we own the data, but, you know, don't hold me to that. There may be something that we can ask the chief for so he can be very clear about that. My understanding is that we own the data, it is scrubbed after 30 days, and there are a lot of controls and regulations put in place as to who uses them, who can view it, when and where. That's for us internally. I will say the chief shared that he's gone through some reporting and some discussions with the ACLU already and provided them a lot of reports, but that's again something for the chief to come in and share.
where are the cameras?
Where are they?
Huh?
No, they're all over. I don't know. There are, I think we have a dozen.
They typically go on to like
Street
utility
lights and-
poles, yeah.
So the town has surveillance cameras at key intersections.
Holy
or key
smoke, I better watch out
locations.
what I do.
These cameras assist
The
in
government
this.
already knows where you are.
So we have video cameras that record video that Milton Police has access to already in a number of locations. These are a separate camera specifically for license plates, so if they're searching for a specific license plate in lieu of watching video, it would trigger a search in the software to complete that search.
So the town has had cameras for at least 30 years. These license plate cameras are new, and they've only focused on license plates. Whereas the other set of cameras that have been around have kind of, so.
Do you know how new? Is that like a 2026?
I believe we are in the second year of our contract. It's 24, 25, 26.
So there's people not happy with it or happy with it?
Flock has come under a lot of scrutiny, the company, because of how their data has been used. Whether by the company or by the departments that have used it. There's a series of investigative reports as well as suits that have been filed for the way the data has been used.
Something new.
So that's just something to flag for our future conversation with the police. 17, anything from the members? No new ones.
It's good news about that dispatch center. It's on its way.
The grant is, yes, $8.5 million has been awarded. in the grant.
So we're moving a little closer.
We're taking the next step to implementation, and there's going to be a number of decisions that come along that, so that's where we're starting to map out what those kind of key decision points are, and it's something we talked about bringing the two chiefs in the fall to provide an update and kind of in a map as to what the next steps are.
So we're going forward, not going sideways.
Correct. Move into implementation now. It'll take a long time to ramp up and to at least 12 months, but that is the direction.
Anything else from members? Alright, public comment response. I don't think we have much of a response. Most of the items that the resident sort of surfaced, we went into Ray.
But I think
Historic district and
Historic
traffic
district, and
mitigation.
traffic mitigation.
yeah, so I think we
covered.
like checked all
Check,
the
check, check.
boxes, yeah.
All discussed.
And I will note, John and his partner were out this weekend cleaning up the traffic
Yeah.
islands on Kidnap, so
Saw that on
we always
Facebook.
appreciate his work and advocacy on behalf of the town.
Which part?
He was at the traffic island, I think at the corner of Brush Hill and Canton,
Oh,
so
okay.
further up.
Okay, future meetings schedules. I think we are not doing July 28th. But we will be back August 4th and then September 8th.
Back to school before we know it.
That's when the traffic starts.
Yep. You're right,
Got a couple
John.
more weeks,
Yep.
then Pete, you're gonna have to work overdrive.
Alright, future agenda items for anyone? I have a couple to mention.
So I got a really interesting inquiry from a resident, earlier this month about, the prolonged drought that we're in, and, water conservation and, what the status is of any potential, looming water ban. I did a little inquiry with MWRA and they assured me that there is more than enough water in the Quabbin that like it could not rain for another year and a half and we'd still be fine. But I think the question that she raised was very interesting and I don't know if we could have someone from DPW or MWRA come out at some point to talk a little bit about what towns like ours can do to be more conscious about water usage, or if there are any other committees like the Climate Impact Committee that are taking additional steps on this.
Sure, let me,
That was an interesting inquiry this month that I was like, you know what, we should talk about it.
we will have a rate setting conversation,
Yeah, or
at our
maybe
next
we could
meeting, so
align
we
it
could
with the
maybe
rate setting,
tee
yeah.
up, something to go hand in hand with that. Let me talk to DPW and we'll
Okay, thank you.
goodness, if you go to any other suburban town outside of the MWRA area, everybody
They
is
all
under
have
water,
water
like
bans, yeah.
handheld big water and home.
Go to Hingham,
Right.
the lawns are all brown,
Yeah,
Bridgewater and Salem.
Yeah.
They allow water.
and
but a
we
lot
have
of people don't like to use the water much no more, cause they don't like their water bill.
It's bad, yeah,
They don't like it,
Yeah.
even the rich people
yeah,
get mad about it,
yeah,
and they have an outside meter, they don't like that bill.
yep, it is, it's expensive.
So they cut back on their water usage, on the sprinkler systems and everything,
Yeah,
you know? They just
But I
don't like that
learned-
bill.
I learned a lot from my inquiry that I think would be fascinating for other people who care to know about their water, access.
Any other agenda items, future agenda items? I have two, just from our meeting tonight. One, if we could possibly have that architect attend our A4 meeting, so they have that on their schedule. Move forward, elaborate, I'm hoping that, hopefully we'll have our appraisal back by that time too. And then secondly, us to continue and follow up on the economic development plan. I know we discussed, opening that scope, I don't think we had submissions for the scope or we engaged in it since, so that we don't,
Yeah.
have that fall through.
We've discussed internally and have reached out to MAPC to pick up the conversation, but ideally by the fourth week, I can provide at least an update as to where things stand.
I don't know the cadence we were thinking about for sort of more meetings, joint meetings with the planning board. But it could tie into, talking about that again in an upcoming, if you think that could be quarter, maybe we're not thinking that often, but should probably already think about getting that next one on the calendar then, if it's gonna be something close to quarterly.
I think we had planned to talk about that around the time that the housing production plan deliverable was due. So I think we had tentatively circled an October meeting as a joint meeting with the planning board around, depending on the work in the housing production plan, so.
So we could have two pretty big items to discuss with
Correct.
And should we also consider like targeting a date for a school committee, but that would be more around like budget purposes.
I think yes, but the school committee maybe after or during the final steps elaborate.
Okay.
Because once we get their architect information and our appraisal, we will need to engage with them about their programming, cost analysis, and also how we go out to the town and the residents about the plans we once we have that, once we have both architect and appraisal, I think everything's good. We should schedule a school.
Okay.
All right, going into executive session. I was right at 2 hours. What's happening? I move to enter executive session to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Laborie College at 303 Adams Street, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session. I'll also move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association, Milton Professional Management Association, Milton Public Employee Association, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, Milton Police Association, Milton Superior Officers, Milton Library Association, based on my belief that the discussion of this matter in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session.
Second.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Lucia.
Yes.
Yes.
Tyree.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Can we move to adjourn?
Yes.
I take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made,
Second?
motion seconded, Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Ms. Omshad.
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Oh, go.
I don't know why I was shy to do that.
You were a little hesitant.
Like,
I was right at 2 hours, 2:07.
Hey, Nick,
It's nice.
if they need a boiler, right, for that Mary A. Cunningham School?
Yep.
Could you take an appropriation away from, the capital? Something they approved?
They have some money already for both plumbing and heating projects, so I think cobbling together a few
Should be
different-
enough money?
Yeah. Or, and then hitting.
Did you know where I was going with that?
What's that? What?
Take the generator away.
That would be a town meeting act. That would require a town.
Nick can always find some money in the couch.
Under the shells, the seashells.
Yeah,
That couch is getting bare.
yeah, yeah.
Last
Sorry,
week-
shook it a lot of
Last
times.
week he did a good job.
It's easier to do June 25th, it's harder to do July 21st.
You gotta find 10 grand.
You gotta find somebody else's couch.
I knew who wasn't, who was in and who was out.
You gonna start?
I'll just tell Tom, I'm gonna hang here.
I'll open this, I'm gonna save this.
I need a snack.
It's gonna be very
Pete,
hard.
you going to
like this.
Hawaii?
This will open.
Yeah.
Buy
This
one
is
of those
really
houses
nice.
that husband and wife
Nice.